if I were to ask you to give me an elevator pitch for Inkblot, what would it be?
A magical black cat that can go anywhere and do anything in a fantastical world. In fantastical worlds.
Worlds.
Yeah, worlds, because there's multiple.
Mm-hmm. Welcome back to the Comics Cube, everyone. Today I am with Emma Kubert. Hi, Emma.
Hi.
How are you today?
I'm doing pretty good. I mean, every day that I'm drawing, I'm having a good day, and that is every day.
That is every day.
Yeah.
I have a friend who brought my attention to Inkblot,
Mm-hmm.
and this friend of mine loves cats, and basically she was like, oh, you should interview the creators of Inkblot. And I said, I'm not sure, because I'm new to this. I'm not sure what to ask the creators of a new comic. And then I saw your name, and I was like, wait, I think I know what to ask. You are descended from comic book artist royalty.
I guess, if you want to put it like that.
What was it growing up? What was it like growing up in the Kubert household?
Well, I mean, I would say it was just a regular life, but I guess I was just surrounded by art a bit more, and it definitely influenced me since I was a young girl. To have just people in my family doing what they love and succeeding at it, that was something that, you know, you can really look up to when that's immediately in your family, and seeing, you know, them being successful in stuff that they really love to do. It inspired me to do what I want to do and what makes me happy. So it's art, I guess.
Did you have a favorite of thing that they were drawing when you were growing up, or?
Not really. I know this is weird, but I wasn't really into comics when I was younger. I mean, it kind of seemed like whenever we'd get that box of, you know, DC or Marvel comics that would come in the mail, me and my brother, we would look through it, and I'd see, you know, either Cartoon Network kind of comics, or I'd see Superman, superhero, big muscle men kind of comics. And me being a young girl that's not really into either of those things, I was kind of like, okay, I don't think there's anything here for me, so I'm gonna go like something else. And then so I was actually more into animation and fantasy genres and young adult fiction and all that kind of stuff growing up. I always thought it was really amazing that my family, you know, did all of this, but when I was younger, I guess I didn't really appreciate it as much as I do now, of course.
Of course. I mean, you grew up around it. You're bound to, yeah. But what turned you around on it finally?
Well, I mean, I've always been into art, always been into storytelling. It just seemed like comics weren't the kind of subject matter. Like, all I was really exposed to was either superhero comics or, you know, maybe a little bit of anime and manga, and that just, like, a lot of what I was exposed to wasn't really for me personally. So I went more towards animation. I went more towards, like, illustration, like book illustration and everything. So I went to school to Savannah College of Art and Design for animation. It really wasn't for me, but the biggest thing that kind of turned me around was that I did an internship at DC Comics when I was around like 19, 20 years old. Mm-hmm. And while I was there, it was only the manufacturing, I was a manufacturing intern. So basically I would correct, you know, stories before they would go to print. And my boss gave me this giant omnibus of Harley Quinn It was Amanda Connor's and Jimmy Palmiotti's Harley Quinn. It was like this thick, and I went through all of it. And not instead of correcting, because, I did the work, but, but I was correcting and I was reading it at the same time. And it was just such a fun story with like an exciting female lead, and it was silly and goofy and exciting and weird. And I was like, okay, this is for me. I guess this is exactly what I've been looking for. It wasn't necessarily the medium that I had a problem with. It was more just the kind of subject matter that I wanted to deal with. And seeing the Harley Quinn like that while she was, that character was coming more into prominence, I was like, okay, comics are changing to something different. And I think that's more me. And that's kind of how I was thinking, all right, I like to draw, I like to tell stories. I guess you can make comics into whatever you want to make them. And then I realized this was definitely something that I wanted to try out and I wanted to do with my life. So
it's funny that growing up like that never really occurred to you.
I know, it was kind of weird. I mean, I think the biggest thing was that just growing up in the household that I did, I'm surrounded by my grandpa and my dad, my uncle doing, superhero stuff, like manly men, superhero kind of work, or army drawings, or stuff that I was not into at all. And it kind of didn't occur to me that you could do other stuff with comics. But when it started to, when all of the social movements started to happen and everything, became more diverse and different, I think that was kind of the point where I was like, okay, you can definitely, like, comics are becoming a bit more inclusive nowadays. And so that's why more stories started to be made for all different kinds of age groups. And I was like, all right, this is it.
Yeah, we've definitely seen a sea change in the last several years. I think for the better.
I think for the better too. I think having a more inclusive audience, not only helps the industry, but it helps everyone. I mean, everyone can be into comics. It's a cinematic storytelling method. It's like reading a novel, but it has pictures, That's what I think of it. Instead of reading description, you're looking at it and then reading dialogue. So yeah. It's like, might as well do whatever you want with that, right? And have as many people enjoy it as you can.
I like that. You said it's cinematic and like reading a novel all at once.
Yeah.
Because that's exactly what it is.
I mean, it's a visual medium, but you're still just reading it. So it's like, it's basically you're watching a movie in book form. Which I like.
Yeah, Harley Quinn means a lot to young women, I realized.
I mean, I think it was really the start of bringing in a more prominent female lead into mainstream superhero comics, even though, she's not like the best superhero ever.
Part of her appeal though, right?
But yeah, but that's what I'm saying. It's that bringing more of these, a more diverse group of characters into the universe as more of leads instead of side characters really helps make everything more diverse. Especially, representation definitely matters for a lot of people. Like, you want to read stuff, especially in fiction, you want to read things that either you can relate to or that you want to be. So it's might as well, put everyone should have their own story in there, and then you'll like resonate with an audience. There's so many people out there that you can tap into, I guess. But yeah, I think Harley Quinn was just kind of the start. And I think before that, you had Wonder Woman, Catwoman, and all that kind of stuff, but really making, a female lead so popular, I think kind of had a snowball effect,
So you eventually went to the Kubert school.
I did.
But
After that decision that I made, I left SCAD and then I went to the Kubert school, yeah.
I have a friend who went to SCAD and he said the same thing about SCAD. But
I would just say that it just wasn't for me. I think the scheduling of the whole college didn't really work for what I wanted to do. And a lot of it seemed like they were training you to go into positions, like mid-level positions, that you don't really go up or down in, you just kind of stay at the same level. And for me, what I wanted to do is I wanted to do more concept art, storyboarding, comics, I guess. And I wasn't really getting the kind of skill level quick enough that I really wanted to get out of that school. So I left and then I went to the Kubert school. And at the Kubert school, it's the 3-year program where you're taking 10 classes a week, 2 classes a day. You have 10 assignments a week. You're drawing for about 10 to 14 hours a day going to this school. So that's the kind of structure that I needed. I needed someone to just constantly tell me to keep drawing so that I get better. And that's what really worked for me. They call it a comic book boot camp, by the way.
yeah. So I'm sure you had to do the same assignments and the same work that all the rest of your classmates did, but did your classmates ever treat you differently or anything because of your last name?
No, I mean, honestly, okay, not to brag or anything, but I was a really good student. It was kind of going into the school, I knew that there was going to be, my entire life thinking about going to the Kubert school, I knew that there was going to be a lot of stigma around it. I knew that my dad was teaching there, my uncle was teaching there, and me going in with my last name basically on the school, it's kind of weird. And I knew it was going to be weird, but when I went to the school, I didn't really say anything to any of the other students. I just kind of sat and I listened for the first month. And they didn't really treat me different. I think I would say it was more, I'm very competitive, so I just want to be the best anyway. And then that kind of competitiveness in that kind of close-knit environment really helped build each other up rather than tear each other down. So I liked that part, that everyone there was into art. Didn't really matter where you came from. We're just here in this class getting a critique, working to get better. And I thought that was really cool. I enjoyed that a lot.
Which artists most influenced your style?
Well, I would say Andrew Kubert is definitely one. My grandpa as well, of course. But I think one of the biggest influences that I had was while I was going to the Kubert school, my dad was actually working on Dark Knight 3 for Frank Miller. And so seeing him work on Dark Knight 3 and, seeing more of Frank Miller's work, that was actually a big influence on my own work and my storytelling as I was going through the Kubert school, like learning through that kind of lens. While my dad was learning this type of style and this type of way of storytelling, I was learning it at the same time too. So I thought that was a really cool thing, and I'll always say that Frank Miller's an inspiration because of that. But other artists that I really like, I like Alex Raymond, Alex Toth, Darwin Cook is a great one.
Yeah.
But I also get a lot of influence from animation. a lot of the artists on Avatar: The Last Airbender was definitely a big one. I've noticed that in my own work too recently, that it kind of looks like that, and it's one of my favorite TV shows, which is really funny.
It's only like the greatest cartoon of all time.
I know. I realized that, like, I think I was doing a drawing of a lot of the characters in my own kind of style, and I drew it, and then I looked at it, and I looked at the TV show, and I was like, this looks exactly the same. I don't know what I changed. But I would say a lot of animation, I also get a lot of influence from like Disney and Pixar and DreamWorks and all of like the big kind of things that I grew up with, especially. Glenn Keane, who was a longtime animator for Disney, is
yeah.
a big influence on my own work as well. So not only comics influenced me, it's just artwork in general from really anywhere.
That's very cool.
Yeah.
And you worked on something for the Dark Phoenix movie.
I did. It was a promotion that 20th Century Fox was putting out. It was female inspired posters from female comic book artists as a promotional tool for their DVD release.
Yeah. Is it a rule that the Kuberts have to do the X-Men at some point in their lives?
I hope so. That'd be pretty cool. Just a written in stone rule. Well, this one, I think it was a little different, mostly because it was the movie version, not the comic version that I had to do. And it was only 2 posters that they would fit together in the DVD release box. So I was drawing Sophie Turner. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
But I hope I work on X-Men one day. I think that would be really cool. That
would be really cool, actually.
I would love it.
Either X-Men or Hawkman. That would be really cool.
One of those. I mean, I've always wanted to work on, well, one Batgirl is my favorite character, so I've always wanted to work on that.
Mm-hmm.
I also always wanted to do Superman. I think that would be so cool to do a Superman story, but we'll see. The future holds all.
I think it's high time for a female artist to draw a male protagonist.
That's what I'm saying. It's that I would really like. Not only would it be awesome to do, but for me, I think it'd be one of the biggest challenges to draw Superman. And I like a good challenge. So.
Yeah, let's move on to Inkblot.
Okay.
So Inkblot, it's coming out in Image. By the time this episode goes up, the first issue will have already been out.
Woo!
So Inkblot, if I were to ask you to give me an elevator pitch for Inkblot, what would it be?
A magical black cat that can go anywhere and do anything in a fantastical world. In fantastical worlds.
Worlds.
Yeah, worlds, because there's multiple.
Mm-hmm. And yeah,
go on.
And what was the inspiration for Inkblot?
Well, when I was at the Kubert school, there would be a lot of assignments where you can really come up with your own concepts. So this was a concept that I started doodling, an Inkblot cat. I would doodle a witch with the cat, and it just eventually kind of turned into something. I wasn't sure what exactly, but it was kind of brewing. I would do sketches here and there. But Inkblot really came from my childhood cat, and then my love of fantasy and the fantasy genre. And just, if you're a creator and you love fiction like I do, I guess, and a lot of fantasy, I've always dreamed about building my own fantasy world. And so having the opportunity of doing Inkblot and building my own story in my own world, it's so cool. It's amazing. I mean, like, it's a dream come true, really. And then where it came from, it was just years of developing and years of, taking this idea and putting it together with this other one, where actually Inkblot came from was that I developed that idea in school, but it was called Willowbrook. And so from Willowbrook, I did a Kickstarter, I think a year or two ago, for a first issue. And it was really fun. I wanted to see what Kickstarter was all about. And, but I didn't want to keep doing Kickstarter for it. I wanted to find some sort of publisher for it. And Willowbrook itself wasn't gaining, recognition with the publishers. So when I contacted Image and I got, feedback from that, Rusty and I basically took Willowbrook, took some of his ideas, took a little more of my ideas over here, and then we meshed it all together and we created Inkblot. And then there you go.
Is Inkblot going to be, is it going to have a finite run, or will it be?
It's going to be an ongoing series. I would say that the basic start of Inkblot is you're going on a fun magical adventure with a black cat that can literally do anything it wants. You're going to meet new characters and go on new adventures and have a good time. But eventually, what our aim is that we want to take these characters that you're introduced to and bring them all together, bring you more plot, bring you more story, kind of like a Game of Thrones kind of storytelling, except through a cat, and it's young adult. It's not, rated
It's not
R.
Game of Thrones.
Yeah.
That's okay. I mean, people love cats.
Exactly.
That's what the internet is made for, right? So
I know, and this cat is perfect. It's just like a black dot on a page with two giant eyes.
I've seen that, yeah. And you work with Rusty on it. What's the working process like?
Well, basically with me and Rusty, we do something that's called the Marvel method, and this is what Stan Lee and Jack Kirby did when they started Marvel, was that they would come up with an idea together, and Jack Kirby would draw out everything. He would create all of the story through images and drawings, and then Stan Lee would go back in and write all of the dialogue in there. So that's basically what me and Rusty do, except we really do go back and forth on each job. Like, I'll pencil the 20 pages, he'll ink the 20 pages, I'll color the 20 pages, and then he'll letter and write the dialogue for it. So it's really like the most collaborative you can ever get with a comic ever.
Yeah, I got confused with that because when I was looking at all of the previews for it, it just said that it was done by the two of you.
I know, and that's because it really was done by the two of us. And a lot of people actually ask me that they do wonder what the process is, and I'm just, because no one really does comics this way anymore. It's really like kind of a flashback. But for us, it works really, really well because, one, we live in the same room in the same place, and we went to school together. We were in the same classroom. We've worked side by side for probably the last, 4 years and counting. And it's just something that two artists, know how to do, how to storytell through pictures and then through words. I don't know.
The Marvel method still works.
It does. I think it's great because it's not just my work. It's not just his work. It's really so collaborative and it's like we kind of described it to ourselves as like improv, where, you know, we'll just say what the main point of the issue is, and then I'll just, you know, go and draw a couple pages and he'll ink it, and then he'll, you know, come up with some dialogue for it. And it's very interesting. It's a very interesting process, but I think it's really fun. It's fun, and there's a lot of creative freedom that goes along with it. So
That's awesome. So can you describe maybe the first 2 or 3 worlds in Inkblot for our viewers?
with Inkblot, there is actually, let me think, maybe 7 different worlds. The ones that you'll spend the most time in are the forest lands, which is, you know, basically you'll meet the standard elves, wood nymphs, kind of like that type of stuff. And then there's the mountain lands, which you'll see, you know, dragons and giants and all that stuff. And those are the kind of worlds that they're not connected just yet, but you'll read it in the comic, but this little cat can do anything and go anywhere on a whim. So since you're following this cat, you're going to be going wherever it wants to go. And you'll be traveling through these worlds with the cat.
So it's safe to say, since you were talking about how growing up you felt that comics weren't for you, that you're making a comic that young you would have loved to read.
That's exactly, I said this on a last interview, is that's my goal for my career, is just to make comics that I would read when I was younger. Because it was just something that I think I missed when I was young. I think I just missed the point where, you know, comics turned into something a bit more inclusive. So it's like, I want to contribute to that. I want to make stuff that I personally would read. And that's why I really love Inkblot. It's because if I saw that on a comic shelf, like me not being attached to it at all and just seeing that cat look at me, I'm gonna be like, yeah, I want that.
That's great. I'm loving the range of comics that are out now. You have any favorite comics that you're reading now?
I actually don't, just because I don't really read comics right now
Too busy.
because I am too busy drawing them.
Awesome.
I am trying to think of a couple though. I know I more look at the artists and the creators more than the actual comics. So sometimes when, like, you know, Joelle Jones comes out with a new comic, I'm gonna read that.
She's so good.
I know. She's amazing.
Yeah.
And I always liked, I like Jorge Jimenez. I love his stuff. I loved his run on Super Sons. And then I'm trying to think of a couple other things, but I can't really think of it.
All right. So this has been awesome.
Awesome.
So, and best of luck with Inkblot. I'm really looking forward to it.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. I'm looking forward to it too.
Thank you, Emma. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.